Hello and welcome to another episode of Dwelling on Things with the Dweller, featuring me, the Vault Dweller. Today we're going to talk about something really serious, and probably something that's going to get me a lot of hate comments. And that is, why does Final Fantasy suck now? No, seriously, why does it suck now? I mean, the game started out pretty simple, and since this is going to be an in-depth discussion about Final Fantasy and why it turned into such a raging pile of shit, in my opinion, let's talk about the first three games, Final Fantasies 1, 2, and 3. They were really simple. Basically, you go around, collect some crystals, and kill the big bad. Yeah, maybe one's plot was a little weird, what with Garland, I believe it was, wanting to go back in time so he could be immortal. Yeah, maybe that didn't really make sense what he was doing, but his motives were clear. He wanted to be immortal and he wanted to do this weird time loopy thing and create a paradox. And with Final Fantasy 3, we're going to jump to that because that one's my favorite, probably in the entire series. In fact, yeah, definitely in the entire series. That one was basically stop the cloud of darkness from corrupting the rest of the world and destroying it. And you collect crystals to do that. And that one got a little more in depth with the leveling system, adding the job classes, which I thought were really, really neat, actually. But that was pretty much it for a really long time. Until we got to Final Fantasy VII. Yeah, Final Fantasy VII. That one starred Cloud Strife and his giant motherfucking Buster Sword. Now, there are a lot of things you can say about Final Fantasy VII, but one of the first things that comes from my experience is that game is really confusing. And you know what? Don't bring up that Crisis Core thing, because I know that goes a little more in depth and tells you Cloud's backstory, or at least the backstory to his Buster Sword. But, I mean, I shouldn't have to play that. I should be introduced to a game knowing who the character is and knowing what's going on. And that's just one issue. The other thing is, Cloud started a long tradition of characters and main characters in Final Fantasy that were overly dramatic, poorly written, and that I didn't really feel all that connected to. Now, don't get me wrong, I don't hate Cloud. In fact, he's probably one of the better of them. But he did start that tradition, as far as I'm concerned. Despite that he was well written by comparison, it still happened. Now, I know Final Fantasy VII is a game that a lot of people, and especially Final Fantasy VII fans, or Final Fantasy fans in general really, hold dear to their heart. And I'm not trying to say it's a terrible game. In fact, Final Fantasy VII is a pretty good game, and it did a lot of things that really weren't being done very often. The story was interesting. My biggest problem with the story, however, is that it takes a while to get into. And I don't mean that as you have to play a while before the story really comes in or before the story really gets to its high point. I mean that in the sense that the story, you're really confused when you start off. You don't really know any of the terminology. All you really know is that suddenly your group is blowing up a building because you don't know why. And they say stuff about Shinra and stuff, but you don't know what that is. And and it's really hard for me to get into heroes that are blowing up the power grid to places, just ruining hospitals and stuff. I mean, yeah, the corporations may be evil, but I'm pretty sure the hospitals aren't. So people died because of that. It's kind of hard to play a terrorist when you don't really know their motives very well. And they just kind of set you into that. And because of that, it feels really weird. Not to mention the story just feels just really disjointed to me. I mean, first you're blowing up some stuff, and then suddenly Cloud's dressing like a woman, and if you do that too well, then you end up having sex, and that's just weird. Anyway, moving right along through 7, there's also it did do one other thing that I thought was really cool, but I can nitpick about nonetheless. You see, Final Fantasy VII was one of the first games, to my knowledge anyway, that allowed you to pick your own girlfriend. And, that's become increasingly popular, especially in games like Mass Effect, Dragon Age. Pretty much every BioWare game lets you do that now. And while that is really cool, I hate it that the game ends up shoehorning you into being with fucking Aerith. And I'm sorry. I know a lot of people probably like her, but I don't like her. I hate her. I hate her so much. She's the damsel in distress, and I don't like women that are the damsel in distress. In fact, I tried to get with Tifa, because I don't really care for Yuffie, but at least Yuffie can do things. And after Final Fantasy VII, we come along to Final Fantasy VIII. Yeah, Final Fantasy VIII. I played this game, and while I do like the gameplay to a degree, despite kind of being monotonous and somewhat annoying at times, I really can't stand the character of Squall himself. He is the whiniest, most emo person, and it's not even really that he just speaks in ellipses all the time, just always dots, has nothing to say, and granted, I can understand to a degree, the girl he's in love with is in love with his rival, and there's a bunch of shit that's going on in his life, but he never, ever really seems happy, and I just can't get over that. It's annoying. I mean, at least Cloud had more than one emotion at most times. Squall just literally seems perpetually unhappy with his life, and that's just frustrating in a hero. Ugh. Now, I never played Final Fantasy IX, but I hear it was actually pretty decent. As for Final Fantasy X, I just can't get over that one. I mean, have you seen that scene where Tidus laughs in it? No. If you haven't, oh, go look that up on YouTube or something, man. It's just not good. And again, the story really wasn't all that intriguing to me. And, fuck, 10-2 was a joke. You could tell they didn't care at that point. And 12, well, actually, let me make a comment about 11 and the fuckery that was. It was stupid to think that anybody was going to play a Final Fantasy MMO. Sorry to say it. And as for Final Fantasy 12, I don't... Again, what's up with this MMO shit that they're pulling? Is it because World of Warcraft's kind of popular? I mean, seriously, that's not why any of us play a Final Fantasy game. It's not because we want to play an MMO. We want to play a turn-based game. Jesus, Square. Don't you know what makes Final Fantasy good? Fuck. And then there's the ass that is Final Fantasy 13, and that game is an abomination. I mean, at least every game up until that point was still a fucking game. Final Fantasy 13 just straps you onto a rail and says, go have fun. There's no deviation from that. You have to be the exact level the game wants you to be and no more. Period. That's fucking stupid. And even when they made 13-2 and they made it a little more open world, it's still dumb. I mean, the plot to that game essentially ripped off Chrono Trigger, which is a better game made by Square. And, you know, I'm not trying to call Square out here and say that they can't make good games anymore. I like the Kingdom Hearts games. I just said Chrono Trigger was good, even though that game came out forever ago, so that's really irrelevant. But they can still make good games. It's just that the Final Fantasy games haven't been good in a while. And if they ever make another good one, I'll play it. But for now, all they've been doing is making it just boring and uninteresting to me. I mean, I know a lot of people had a problem with BioWare and their Mass Effect games, where there were some writers that left and the ending didn't satisfy everybody, but you have to admit, at least that world was consistent, at least that game was consistent, and the characters' motivations were clear. And really, the end, though I can see how it would be disappointing, was a good ending to a great series of games, minor flaws aside. So, I ask, what happened to Final Fantasy? What happened to those simple games where it felt like you were just adventuring through the woods to stop some big bad? Why'd that have to go out the window? What's up with this melodrama, scripted bullshit that it's become? And is it the fans? Is this what the fans want? I mean, as far as I know, nobody liked Final Fantasy 13 that much. And 13-2, though better, wasn't better enough. So, tell me, is this the fault of us, the fans, or is this the fault of Square misreading what the fans want? I don't know. All I know is it's really depressing that Final Fantasy sucks now. Thankfully, I've discovered Atlas games, though, and their Shin Megami Tensei series, as well as the Persona games, make up pretty well for Square, as well as BioWare having the greatest MMO of all time, as in the Mass Effect games. I think I'll be set for RPGs for a while. Anyway, that's been Dwelling on Things with the Dweller. Final Fantasy, as a whole, it's just kind of meh. But tell me what you think. And have a good day.